The Drain Surgeon, in association with BIFSA, presents A Guide to Plumbing. The learning objectives for this video are 1. The tools and equipment required and interpreting the drawing, and 2. Installing an indirect system of cold water supply. Here are the tools and equipment that you will require. Interpreting the drawing. Notes. The cold water storage cistern is to be fitted in the roof space. The CWSC must be placed in such a position so as to allow for ease of maintenance. The CWSC is to be supported on the tie beams using 75mm by 50mm timber bearers, a drip tray and 38mm by 38mm hardwood battens between the bottom of the CWSC and the drip tray. The overflow pipe from the drip tray must terminate outside the building. A 20mm GMS overflow pipe from the CWSC must terminate outside the building. The cold water main supply is to be installed from a 20mm stopcock 150mm above floor level to A. the sink using 15mm GMS pipe and fittings and a 15mm bent copper pipe and compression fittings. The CWSC using 15mm GMS pipe and fittings, a 15mm stopcock, a 15mm copper pipe using compression fittings and a 15mm high pressure ball valve. The 20mm GMS cold water distribution pipe is to be installed from the CWSC through a 20mm gate valve and elbow, then run horizontally to A. the basin using a 20mm by 15mm by 20mm T and 15mm bent copper pipe with compression fittings, and B. the bath using a 20mm elbow and 20mm bent copper pipe and compressor fittings. Appropriate jointing materials must be used on all GMS and copper pipework and the excess removed. All pipework is to be surface mounted 25mm away from and parallel to the walls using the appropriate hold bats secured to the walls. Installing an indirect system of cold water supply. Step 1. Study the drawing carefully and make a list of the materials required to complete this task. Step 2. Step 3. Set out the pipe runs, the position of the stopcock, the position of the gate valve, and the positions of the holder bats on the wall. Step 4. Determine the bearer and batten requirements, then measure, mark and cut them to suit. Place the 75mm by 50mm timber bearers so that they cross the tie beams and in such a position that they are under the edges of the CWSC and secure by nailing. Position the drip tray centrally on the timber bearers with the overflow outlet in a convenient position for termination outside the building. Place the 38 by 38 mm hardwood battens inside the drip tray so that they cross the timber bearers and in such a position that they are under the ends and centre of the CWSC. Place the CWSC carefully in position on the hardwood battens, ensuring it is the correct way round for the pipework connections. Check the positioning of the CWSC, ensuring that there is sufficient room to allow for ease of maintenance. Step 5. Fit the drip tray overflow pipe so that it terminates outside the building. Step 6. Using the appropriate tools, securely fit the holder bats to the wall in accordance with your setting out. Step 7. Refer to the drawing and, commencing at the 20 mm stopcock, thread the end of a 20 mm GMS pipe and fit the stopcock using the appropriate jointing material. Ensure the stopcock is fitted in the correct direction of flow. Determine the length of pipe required between the stopcock and the 20 by 15 by 15 T for the supply to the sink. Fit the stopcock and T using the appropriate jointing material. Note: the sink must be supplied with water from the main for cooking and drinking purposes. Fit the elbow and pipe to the T using the appropriate jointing material. Determine the length of pipe required between the T and the elbow in the roof space. Fit to the T using the appropriate jointing material. Note: the elbow will be fitted after passing the pipe through the ceiling. Cut a neat hole in the ceiling, slightly larger than the diameter of the pipe, directly in line with the pipe run. Pass the end of the pipe through the hole in the ceiling and securely fit the pipework into the holder bats. Step 8. Fit the high pressure ball valve in the cistern using the appropriate washers and back nut. Also, fit the elbow to the pipe passing through the ceiling. Step 9. Fit the pipe from the elbow to the stopcock using the appropriate jointing material, ensuring the stopcock is in the correct direction of flow. Make the connection from the stopcock to the ball valve using copper pipe 460/2 and compression fittings. Fit the overflow pipe from the cistern to terminate outside the building using the appropriate jointing material. Step 10. Cut a neat hole in the ceiling, slightly larger than the diameter of the cold water distributing pipe, directly in line with the pipe run. Step 11. Refer to the drawing and, commencing at the CWSC, determine the length of pipe required between the outlet of the CWSC and the elbow. Fit the elbow and the pipe to the outlet of the CWSC. Step 12. Determine the length of pipe required between the elbow and the gate valve. Thread the end of a 20 mm GMS pipe and fit the gate valve using the appropriate jointing material. Determine the length of vertical pipe required between the gate valve and the elbow 100 mm above floor level. Fit the gate valve to one end and the elbow to the other using the appropriate jointing material. On final tightening, the gate valve and elbow should be square to one another in the correct direction. Apply jointing material to the threaded end of the pipe, pass the end of the pipe through the hole in the ceiling into the elbow, tighten the pipe until the gate valve is square to the wall, then securely fit the pipework into the holder bats. Note: it may be necessary to remove the headgear of the gate valve to enable tightening of the pipe. Replace when finished. Step 13. Determine the length of pipe required between the elbow and the 20 by 20 by 15 T for the supply to the basin. Measure, mark, cut, ream, thread the pipe and fit the T using the appropriate jointing material. Determine the length of pipe required between the T and the elbow for the supply to the bath. Fit the elbow and T using the appropriate jointing material. On final tightening, the elbow and T should be in line. Apply jointing material to the threaded end of the pipe and tighten the pipe into the elbow 100 mm above floor level until the two fittings are plumb with the wall. Then securely fit the pipework into the holder bats. Measure, mark, cut, ream and thread plus minus 200 mm of 15 mm GMS pipe. Apply jointing material to one thread of the pipe and tighten into the 20 by 20 by 15 T. Step 14. Using 15 mm and 20 mm copper pipe 460/2, measure and bend the offsets required for the sink, bath and basin. Using the appropriate copper compression fittings, fit the bent copper pipes to the sink, bath and basin. Clean the work area.